with Gina.
The news with Gina Grad.
Well, Adam alluded to the sort of oddness that was the SNL at home the other night, and they did have some great guests. Of course, you know, much easier to do from the comfort of everyone's home. They did attempt to recreate that feel of a normal episode. They had sketches. People, you know, taped them in their house. Chris Martin was the musical guest at his house. Tom Hanks was the host. Other special guests were Alec Baldwin calling in as Trump, Larry David as Bernie Sanders. And some skits work better in this format than others, but the opening monologue with Tom Hanks happened in what appears to be his kitchen. And of course, you know, sans audience. So I just thought I'd give you a little taste of what that was like.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Hanks.
Hey. Oh, whoa, thank you. That is some sound effect of applause and whistles. Thank you. Thank you, engineers. Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. It's me, your old pal. And don't worry now. Don't be afraid. This shaved head was just for a movie and my hair is growing back very slowly. It does save time in the shower, so I don't know, maybe we should all do it, huh? Yeah. Hey, it's good to be here, though it is also very weird to be here hosting Saturday Night Live from home. It is a strange time to try and be funny, but trying to be funny is SNL's whole thing. So we thought, what the heck? Let's give it a shot.
There was, I watched a monologue. He's a super likable guy. They had cuts in it, which felt weird. It felt like they should just go through the monologue because that's what they do with the monologue. They had to put a couple of cuts in there where he played a couple of characters, like asking questions for the audience is clearly him. But the cuts were you saw one at the end of that. It bumped me a little bit.
Me too. It was a little distracting. It was unnecessary. It was kind of the whole point of this is we're at home. This is sort of all stripped down behind the scenes. It is what it is. So it felt unnecessary and it bumped me too because this is supposed to be just bare bones and it felt like it just did not need that extra bit of production.
He wasn't the de facto host, was he? He just did the monologue?
Was he in other sketches? I mean, I looked at them online. I didn't see him in other sketches.
I watched some of it. I kind of fast forwarded to some of it just to see what bits everyone was going to do and that kind of stuff. And I did not see him as the host. I saw him as the monologue.
Although
host.
He did introduce Chris Martin, which was a signature host duty.
Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know how many more of those they're going to do. Do we have any guesses?
Well,
at least a month's worth.
I think they're just going to
do it again.
Oh yeah. I think they're just going to continue on that way, I would guess. It does make you think, would it open the door to get guys who formerly would never do it, like take a guy like Daniel Day-Lewis or somebody like that, right? And it's like, maybe they don't want to go to New York. Maybe they don't want to do something in front of a live audience. Maybe they don't want to
commit to a week of writing.
Right. Like maybe whatever. Maybe the guy lives in Hounslow, England or something. And he's a cobbler now or whatever. But you kind of pitch him, the show must go on. This is for the morale of the globe. You know what I mean? Right. But two, that guy doesn't want to do a week of practice and sketches and bits. And some of those guys are just weird and private and don't want to be in front of a live audience or go deal with the scene, in other words. But maybe you could get somebody who formerly wouldn't come to New York and do that.
Yeah, and to your point, that would give Norm Macdonald a nice opening to come back.
Any mercurial star who just didn't want to put with the was it Gina Mishigas?
The Mishigas.
Yeah, they would be much more apt to just phone it in, almost literally.
Literally.
Yeah, it's always weird. It's so sad that guys like Norm Macdonald have to be full blown weirdos because everyone always says to me like, "Oh, you and Norm are awesome. You should go and do Norm's podcast or do Norm's," and I'm like, "Sure." But he's a weirdo. Like he can't do things, like Remember we were kidding about that bit where it's Adam teaches Norm to drive?
Yeah.
I got so many tweets of people going, that would be the best show ever. You just put a bunch of GoPros inside a rented Taurus and me and Norm just drive. I just teach him how to drive. Like that would be a great series on YouTube or whatever. And then everyone goes, when are you going to do that? And I go, I'll do it tomorrow. Norm is a weirdo who won't leave his apartment. So it makes it difficult. It's also, I don't know, like, are you guys, maybe these times make you sort of drill down a little more on humans and their foibles. I was just talking to Dr. Drew about it. Just like really just kind of noticing human behavior and what motivates people and how it works. But
for example, what do you mean?
Well, Norm Macdonald.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like, did you know?
There's an example.
Did you know there would be this variety of human beings? You know what I mean? Like when I was a kid, there was just like, there are guys that are a little more serious and the guys that were funner. Like it was all your parents' friends, But
or once you're an adult, you're all the same. You're an adult.
Yeah, I didn't really know there were going to be Norm Macdonald. It's like, a guy's a professional comedian, but he won't leave his apartment. Okay. And it's funny. The thing that's weird about Norm is I think he would consider me to be a friend. I consider him a friend. Like we're considered friendly guys who are kind of mistaken for one another oftentimes. And then people always love it when we get together and break apart a Kenny Rogers song or something. So, Adam teaches Norm to drive would be a great internet show and easily done. But actually, Norm could learn to drive.
And it's also really easy, like to have someone set up the cameras and just kind of riff for half an hour or whatever it is.
It'll never happen.
It's weird.
And that's just weird, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It should be so easy.
Yep.
Well, it's not just SNL that's getting creative and thinking outside the box of what they've done for decades. The NBA is turning to alternative forms of competition, which is why the league put together an NBA 2K tournament between players. And now they're also putting on a horse competition consisting of current and former NBA and WNBA players. So the 8 participants, and some of these names you'll know, some of these names I'm sure you'll know better than me. Thunder guard Chris Paul, Hawks guard Trae Young, Jazz guard Mike Conley Jr., Bulls guard Zach LaVine, Allie Quigley of the Chicago Sky, retired NBA player Paul Pierce, Chauncey Billups, and newly elected Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Famer Tamika Catchings. The participants will go shot for shot in a single elimination. The event will begin. The event is, as we record this, beginning this evening. So it was last night.
All this virtual. So wait a minute. How do we execute it? So like there's a whole virtual racing world now.
They each have their own personal hoops they're doing.
Oh, this is an actual horse game.
This is an actual game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The problem, Adam, is that these are all good to great shooters. They should be getting Shaq and Dwight Howard and like all the bad shooters. And you have a lot of Divox. That would be a great competition.
Yeah. It's interesting. So, God, it's an interesting transition, as I try to get my son to play few less video games and get him out in the outdoors and doing stuff. I mean, prior to all this shit. But what I'm saying is it's scary that all the outdoor shit is coming indoors now. And now I wonder what the legacy of that's going to be. Like once people get used to the virtual reality version of it, there's a whole racing thing. They're carrying on with IndyCar and NASCAR, where everyone's just home on a simulator. Also, I was talking to, I think it was Simon Pagenaud, the guy who won the Indy 500 last year, and I think they're rescheduling it for August. There's interesting things. Like, for instance, it is so much hotter in Indy in August that's going to completely change the tactics of the game or the strategy of the game. Heat, blacktop, what it does to the tires, it'll completely change that race. So that's one thing that's going to happen. The heat is going to change it. The other thing is I said, you guys are all doing these simulated races, tons and tons. They're spending tons of time in the simulators. And they're doing all these simulated races because they're all hard charging guys and want to win the simulator race now too. But in the simulator, when you get into a horrible crash, you just go right back and reboot again, right?
Yeah.
I said, after getting in 700 crashes in your simulator, then you get into the car. I wonder if that little part of your brain that fears the accident is lessened just a little bit. You know, like I wonder if there's a residual to no consequences for a long time of crashing. But
not.
Yeah, I hope not. But
And
anyway,
this
yes.
might be naive of me, but when you said, you know, people get comfortable staying inside, and this could be naive, but I'm thinking you'd think people would just be chomping at the bit. Once the gates reopen, you just can't get out there fast enough. So I'm hoping that that's true.
Well, this is given way to the longest walks in the world. Sonny goes out and takes a walk for about 2.5 hours every single day. And I took a walk with my sister yesterday for like 2 hours. It's literally like I've never walked and talked with my sister more than I did yesterday. So,
like physically together or on the phone together? Or?
No, just walking. I don't give a shit about all this
no,
stuff.
I know, but I mean,
you weren't on
when
the phone.
you say you walk with your sister, I'm not talking about the coronavirus. I'm talking about you. And we don't hear about you going on walks with your sister.
She just said, I'll come. No, she did the thing. She did. We got out of the gate a little rocky. I got to be honest with you, because people say things to me, and when they say them to me, I listen, and then I sort of react, right? So she goes, I'll pull up. I'll just pull up in the street. I'll just park in the street, and then you can come down because I don't want to go in the house and freak the kids out or whatever. And I said, oh, okay. Yeah, just pull up and pull up in the street and toot the horn, and I'll come down. I'll keep an eye out for you. So I'm looking through my office, and I'm looking out in the street the whole time, and now it's getting late, and she's 10 minutes late. She's whatever. And then at some point, I stumble out the side door and realize, oh, she didn't pull up in the street. She pulled up the driveway where I couldn't see her and sort of parked behind the garage, and then started walking around to the front door. And then I was walking around like yelling her name and stuff. But I said to her after some confusion, I said, hey, I thought you were pulling up to the street. And she did the street, driveway, it's whatever, like however it goes. And then I was like, when you say street, I went a little Larry David, but I was like, hey, you said street. I meant street. Like, I'm looking for you, and I don't know you're behind my house on the driveway because you said street. But after that, we had a nice long walk and a nice long talk. And it was nice. There's some residual stuff that's coming from this. I would formerly have never taken a 2-hour walk with my sister because of just the crazy schedules on both sides.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't want to shit on your point, but you kind of already shit on your own point. But Tessa's never wanted to spend more time outside. Like, we're on our lawn. She wants to play hide and seek, like around our bushes and stuff. Like, she's outside all the time. So maybe this is creating a more like reinvigoration. You know what I mean? For nature, as it were.
It'd be nice.
So just to give you a couple of these quick roundup bits of info, Japan, like most of the U.S. states, has a list of essential businesses that many remain open during this outbreak. The difference is in Japan, hair salons are considered essential. Oh. And from what I hear, it may have been on this show, so I can't remember, but hair dye and hair clippers are gone online. Mm. Like on Amazon, whatever. I mean, good luck to you finding those at this point.
God bless Japan. I believe I heard they were going to divest from China, which is a big deal. And more nations should do that. We should be, one thing comes to this whole thing. It should be us thinking about our relationship with China. And I believe I read or heard that Japan was going to divest. And people from this fucking country who never stopped talking about divesting from Israel should also be consistent then and think about divesting from China as well. One thing that Dennis Prager has brought up, and he'll be up in about 15 minutes or so, when you talk about, calling, the whole on the heels of the whole Bill Maher thing and call it from China. We need to blame China. And then people going, well, that's xenophobic. And then of course, we have to do you don't hate, you basically hate the communist government of China. You don't hate Chinese people.
Right.
And if you really think of it, it's xenophobic. There's a point that Prager brings up, which is there's two nations that hate China the most, and that's Hong Kong and Taiwan.
That's right.
They hate China the most, and they're all Chinese. So let's stop with the racists here and start focusing on the behavior of the communist government of China, which we hate. I hate as a white person. And then if you're from Hong Kong, you would hate them as a Chinese person.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah. At least 150 members of the Saudi royal family are reportedly infected with coronavirus. Dr. Fauci.
How many members are there?
If 150 is just a small slice, then there's a lot of people in that family. Dr. Fauci says social distancing is working, has lowered U.S. coronavirus death forecast to 60,000. And the other big headline with him is he'd love it if we never, as a culture, went back to shaking hands. We should be done with shaking hands, according to Dr. Fauci. This is no longer... it's an archaic ritual that just transfers these germs back and forth. So maybe we'll start bowing. Maybe we'll just get up real close and wave. Who knows?
Forearm bash.
Oh, there you go.
Well, I think we have to, I've always said you either want to be on the beach or you want to be past the waves, the breakwater, and just floating. The middle always kind of gets you pummeled. You know what I mean? So we either need to completely cover ourselves in germs all the time, like lick your hand and then put her there, pal, and just literally never use soap or Purell again and just make ourselves into sewer rats, or go the distance route. We live in the middle. Like we do some handshaking, we do some soap, we do some Purell, we do some, and we give it back and forth. I mean, I was talking to Dr. Drew about the homeless community. And I was like, why are they not decimated? Like, why is Los Angeles has 60,000 people, or in California, or maybe it's just Los Angeles. Yeah, it has like 58,000 homeless. Why aren't they destroyed by this virus? And because the homeless get kind of everything first, and it always goes through them like a wildfire through their community. And also they seem compromised, and obviously they don't have access to health care or shelter. And so it would seem like you would be stepping over dead homeless people on the sidewalk all the time, or that County USC would just be filled, like the waiting room would be filled with the homeless community that was being ravaged by this virus. And it doesn't seem to have just disproportionately affected them. As a matter of fact, it just doesn't. I've not even heard any stories about the homeless community. Now, part of me makes me wonder if their immune system of fucking sleeping outside and being exposed to everything all day, every day, like if you can make it 15 years on the street, maybe your immune system is a lot tougher than the person that's living in this sort of purified, HEPA-filtered Purell world we're living in. I don't know. Like, part of the stuff we're going to find out when the dust settles and all this stuff is, why weren't the homeless community decimated by this? Does it have something to do with their immune system and what they've been exposed to?
Yeah, that's a great question. And by the way, it's the county, I think. That's the county number, about 60,000 homeless in LA County. And you're right. And is it just that, like, how do you find these numbers and report them? I know that our county health director says, 20 of the deaths were people from the homeless population. But I'm thinking, how do you even know? How would you even seek these people out?
I imagine if you got really sick, you'd just go, you'd end up at County USC or some facility like that, in which case we could tally you. And then if you just expired on the sidewalk, I imagine we'd have to try to figure out why you expired or what you expired of. But
if you didn't die, like, they're saying, I mean, I'm it's general, but like what 2% of the people who get this die. And if that's around the right number, then like you said, lots of homeless people could have it and they recover from it. So to your point, they are kind of the shining beacon of the perfect example for the Adam Carolla way of living.
Thank you.
They're leaning into this.
There's something, we'll get into it more tomorrow, but there's a couple reports I saw in like Los Angeles and herd immunity and how we must have had this a long time ago because we have so many people coming in from China, and we had them coming in for like 3 months before the travel ban. And there was something like up to 8,000 people coming into LAX direct from China.
Right.
How could we not have this? How could the homeless population not have it? How come everyone in Los Angeles isn't affected by this? So we're going to find out all this stuff. But I still think that more people, it's going to turn out that more and more people have it, and it doesn't adversely affect a large group of people. Right. Still means there's things to do, but I think that's where we're going to end up.
And I don't know if you talked to Dr. Drew about this, but I saw I think it was Daily Dose of Dr. Drew, and he was talking to Dr. I want to say Yadigar, and he was talking about how ventilators might be doing more harm than good, and how this doctor is like successfully keeping people off ventilators and they're recovering quicker. And that was really interesting. I had never heard that before.
Everything that I've experienced over the last 10 years of my life, every single thing is unintended consequences. Like that is my new religion. Like somebody tweeted me today and they said, do you think all the use of Purell and soap and all the sanitize, all this kind of, do you think that's going to tend to compromise immune systems years from now or whatever, or with the new protocol of nobody shakes hands and everyone Purells? And I was like, I'm sure it will. It's always whatever we try to do somehow, but you still have to try to do things. It's a predicament, but many of the things we try to do end up either backfiring or causing an unintended consequence sort of down the road. And
creating
now there's
super fill in the blank.
Well, they're starting to say, like Sweden, Sweden is not just rolling the dice. Sweden is saying, if you're old or you're compromised or you're in this at-risk community, stay home. Yeah. If you're not, go out and let's see if we can get some herd immunity going so that when the second wave comes, we're not decimated. Right. We're going another direction, which is working now. But if there is a second wave, then I don't know how it's going to work. So we're going to have to figure out, how it all works. But I'm starting to think more and more about herd immunity and about how many more people, especially in Los Angeles, probably were exposed to this over the months before the lockdown. Sorry.
I think I imagine I know your answer to this, Adam. And I think I know yours, Brian. I think they're probably two different answers. Mm-hmm. But if they, in the next year, depending on what happens, if they come out with a vaccine, would you take it?
Oh, I would.
I wouldn't, but Brian should.
Why wouldn't you though?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
I never do any of that shit.
Right. And I hear a lot of hot debate about if there's a vaccine for this, if an inoculation.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess I have to see what it is, like where it is. Like, I don't want to infect other people and, all that kind of stuff. I do so much work in with the elderly community, homeless community. I don't want to jeopardize any of them.
Mr. Meals on Wheels is your middle name.
Yeah, I wouldn't care. I mean, if Drew showed up with some vials, I'd roll up my sleeve. But I want to know. I still want to know who's had. I'm starting to think a lot more people have had this.
Right.
A lot of the newer studies are suggesting that a much higher percentage of people had this and it passed through them. But
and that's the newest test, right? The antigen test. Isn't that what that is?
We're going to find out, I think, a ton more in the next 10 days. That's what I'd say.
Speaking of which, Gina, sorry, go ahead. No, I was only going to say it's crazy that it's so hard to get tested now. Like our grocery store, the Trader Joe's just around the corner, closed down because one of their employees tested positive for COVID. And so we walked there on Saturday. It was closed down, and Christy's like, "Oh shit, I was just there on Thursday." It's like, "Oh well, I guess we'll have to start the count now because you're technically exposed or whatever." She was wearing gloves and a mask and everything, but it's crazy. I was looking it up. It's crazy that it's so hard to get tested. Like you have to be showing symptoms and be sick and be approved for a test. At least in LA, anyway.
That's right. Well, now they're saying I think Garcetti said our mayor, if you have symptoms, you can go to a testing site now. Those things were locked down a week or two ago. You had to have a doctor's note. You had to have, a ton of paperwork. Now, I believe they're saying if you have symptoms, show up at one of these drive-through sites. But now you really are. You're the example, Brian. If you think you've been exposed, you got to do the right thing and self-quarantine in your basement alone for the next 14 days or whatever.
We'll see.
All right, Gina, one more.
All right. Well, let's get off the virus tip and talk about the Beatles. Beatles memorabilia continues to sell for big bucks, and that was the case Friday at Julian's auction. I don't know if you saw these numbers. Paul McCartney's handwritten lyrics to Hey Jude, I will tell you what it was estimated to go for. It was estimated to go for $160,000. What do you think it sold for?
Well, we know it went for a lot more than that, I guess, because of the story. And so because of that, I'm going to go $550.
Oh, geez. Okay. I was going to say $250.
Adam is closer, but still way off. $910,000.
Wow, that's crazy.
It was the set that Paul used during the recording of the song in London's Trident Studios on July 31st, 1968. Originally scheduled for New York's Hard Rock Cafe, the online sale contained more than 250 items, some of the other big ones. Ringo Starr's Drumhead from their 1964 show at the Cow Palace in San Francisco. Yeah. That sold for $200,000. John Lennon and Yoko Ono's Bagism drawing sold for almost $100,000.
Well, the celebrity paraphernalia is it's a big deal now, and we always talk about it. It just didn't exist before, and now it does. And it used to be cars, guns, guitars, and watches. Those were the categories, and now it's just expanding into
anything with a story.
Everything.
Well, and these are, I just want to read you the last two because I know in actual size of object, you don't get much farther apart. Ringo's Abbey Road Studio ashtray sold for $32,500.
Jesus,
and
they're selling everything.
And speaking of everything, the stage of their very first performance went for $25,600. So from an ashtray to a stage, and that sold for less.
Yeah. Well, again, I got some Paul Newman racing helmets, so good for.
That's right.
Good for us. I had this fantasy. You guys can answer it. It's funny. I have Tom Cruise's fire suit and his helmet from when he ran with Newman in the later 80s, like Color Money era. I could never contact Tom Cruise and either give it back to him or ask him if he wants to visit it. And that's part of what makes Tom Cruise a weird dude, right? There is no possible way that I could ever get hold of Tom Cruise and say, I have your helmet, I have your fire suit from back in the day. Would you like to have it or would you like to visit it? There's no modality for that, and that's what makes Tom Cruise Tom Cruise.
Was this the Days of Thunder days?
Yeah, well, it was pre-Days of Thunder.
Oh.
I do believe he was doing Color of Money. Days of Thunder was, I don't know, 89,
1990, I think.
90. This would have been like 88.
Oh, okay. I just assumed that was the relation.
Well, the relationship was he meets Newman. Newman kind of talks him into doing some racing with him, and then that leads to Days of Thunder because of his interest in racing. All right, let's bring it home.
Days of Thunder is 1990. Color of Money is 86.
Right, so it would have been that window where he was doing his racing with Newman. All right, let's bring it home, Gina Grad.
You got it. I'm Gina Grad, and that's the news.
Gina. That was the news with Gina Grad.